Hi, everyone. Welcome to the George's event. So glad you could all be here, and I hope you enjoy the beers and barbecue. I wish I could be there to enjoy it all with you. I'm excited to talk a bit about what went into the filmmaking of The Creator with you all. So thank you so much to Creamsource for having me, and to Sony and Atomos for sponsoring the event.
Awesome. Oren, great intro and thanks for taking your time. It's been, I imagine, a whirlwind for you post the creator and its
It
release.
has, yes, but it's
Yeah.
been fun. This is sort of the fun part. The hard part is making the film, and the fun part is putting it out into the world and letting it continue live the next phase of its life without us. It's like getting its own apartment after university. We've nurtured it up until now, and now it goes out into the world and finds its people.
Well, it's fantastic, I must say. I had the privilege of watching it at the new IMAX cinema in Sydney. Took my family and didn't really know what to expect from the film because we didn't have too much of an inkling or knowledge of what the film was about beforehand, which I love. I love walking into films that way. And it was, I got to say, it was really an amazing film in general, and the images were stunning. Everything about it, I think, was fantastic. So, firstly, well done and
Thank you.
congratulations. I think it's
Thank you. Yeah.
yeah, really, really great. Um, Before we dive into the film, I think it'd be nice for us to know a little bit about Oren. If you can tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming, where you are in your career now.
Yeah, I think I probably would like to know a little bit about Oren too. Still figuring it out, but yeah, I'm a cinematographer. I've been doing this professionally for about 10 years. I went to NYU Film School in New York City. It's where I got my film education, graduated, like I said, 10 years ago. And I've been working in commercials, music videos, short form, a lot of short films, as well as some indie features. This is my first studio level film, so it's definitely a big leap up for me career wise. And in some ways, even after 10 years, just getting started in the next phase of my career.
Right. Well, yeah, it's not every day that an opportunity like this presents itself to a
No
cinematographer,
kidding.
let, let alone someone like yourself that hasn't done a studio picture before.
Mm.
How does something like that happen? How did that happen for you?
Yeah, the way it happens is you have an Australian DP who happens to be quite well renowned as your mentor, and I've been extremely fortunate to be able to call Greg Fraser a mentor for a number of years now, and he's been very generous with that, and is with other filmmakers as well. So yeah, just got very lucky in meeting him at the right time and keeping in touch, and he's been keeping tabs on my work. When this opportunity came up, he thought of me and called me up, and a month later, I was in Thailand prepping the film.
Wow. Well, sounds like a fairy tale a little bit, but that's
Yes, it still feels like one too. So yeah, definitely very, very grateful for the whole thing. It's been very incredible.
So I guess the one of the things I guess that I take from that is that having good strong relationships is super important in this industry, and obviously having a great mentor, regardless of what level you're at, I think is in any just in life is also very important. So
Yeah, I mean, I think relationships really are everything. Like technique and knowledge, all of that's important. It's not unimportant, but ultimately what leads to a sustainable and growing career is relationships. Now, in my instance, it was happened to be a relationship with a mentor, and some people don't have those opportunities, and I certainly didn't for a long time until I met Greg. Um, so that's not to say that a mentorship is necessary, because this type of opportunity can also come from a relationship with a director, for example, or a producer or somebody else who is in your corner and willing to give you a shot. And I think that ultimately that's the important takeaway is it's the idea of the relationships and the knowledge that being proactive about that and about seeking out those and building those relationships is really the cornerstone of a lasting career for sure.
Right. Well, going back to the film, I think it just looks so spectacular. I'd love to dive into what the building blocks were for establishing the look and the aesthetic for this film. How was that approached with yourself and Greg on this film?
Well, I think the most important component is Gareth, the director. So the look of the film, the approach to the film, all of it really stemmed from Gareth's desire to harken back to a filmmaking style that he adopted for his first film, Monsters. And Monsters, for people who don't know, was a micro budget film that Gareth shot with a micro crew, 7 people traveling around on location in Mexico and Central America, made with a very low budget. It was about $320,000 at the time. And this film came out in 2010 and really is what put Gareth Edwards on the map and got him Godzilla and then subsequently Rogue One. So the guerrilla style that he adopted on that film was really the blueprint for the creator. Gareth was his own cinematographer on that film and operated the camera. The lighting approach was hyper naturalistic. It was all shot on location in real places with available light. And the visual effects in that film were all designed in post, and they were designed to the footage and not the other way around, which is typically how it's done on visual effects driven films. Is you design all your visual effects and then you try to chase after that look that you've designed on set by setting up green screens or shooting partial sets on stages and all that stuff. So for this film, Gareth really wanted to embrace that filmmaking approach and that aesthetic, that sort of pseudo documentary kind of feel that feels very spontaneous, authentic, and creates a really immersive sense of a real space that we're transporting and immersing an audience into. So all of that was really the foundation, the building blocks of how we wanted to approach making this film and what we wanted it to look and feel like. Now, on top of that, we also wanted it to look and feel like an epic sci-fi film. So it was really about sort of finding the meeting point between those two worlds. And it's like, how can we sort of take this pseudo-documentary filmmaking approach, this kind of guerrilla indie approach, but make a film that looks and feels like Blade Runner or Alien with that filmmaking approach? Like, what is the meeting point of that? What does a documentary with robots look like that's shot on location, but it still exists in this elevated sci-fi world? So it was all about sort of finding the meeting point between those two approaches and that aesthetic. And yeah, I think that drove pretty much every decision that we made in terms of how to make the film and how to approach it.
Right. Well, it seems like you guys did an amazing job of, it did seem very run and gun, the film, even though it was so big. And on the big shots, it seemed like there were a lot of locations. And on your big wides, it'd be interesting to know how practically the production managed the lighting, the big wides.
Yes. Well, part of this filmmaking approach involved really embracing a natural light aesthetic. And that oftentimes meant embracing natural and available light. So our approach really depended on, it varied from location to location. And I think we really ran the gamut we had some locations in the film, like a lot of our exteriors, where we did not light at all, our day exteriors. We fully embraced natural and available light. Some of our interiors as well. We showed up at a location like a big rice mill and a big factory, abandoned factory. These places already look so beautiful and they have such great natural light that there really was nothing we needed to do to make them look good. You can start going down a road of setting up a bunch of big lights outside of a location, but why do that when the sun is giving it to you for free? So I think that was a really big part of the approach, both in terms of the kind of documentary style, but also the aesthetic that we were after, which we wanted the film to feel very naturally lit and very authentic and lived in. So some locations we would augment, we would either add or subtract existing light practicals, um, flags, shaping light, like doing whatever we needed to sort of curate what the lighting in that location looked like to narrow it down into something that felt a little bit more aesthetics forward. A lot of times we were adding light. A lot of times we're adding artificial light, movie lights that are just out of frame or just outside of a window or disguised in a art department housing. And so the light is actually in frame, but it looks like a practical. Mm-hmm. And then we're also experimenting a lot with mobile lighting units that we would kind of fly in as the cameras were rolling to sort of add some additional kicks and adjustments as we went. And some locations we had to light from scratch, from the ground up. We had a few stage builds in Thailand, as well as 2 weeks in London, where we shot at Pinewood Studios on the volume and also on a traditional sort of stage approach. So for those, we had a pretty traditional kind of big scale stage lighting approach that involved a lot of Creamsource in London. So thank you guys for that. A lot of Vortex 8s in the sky for the stage builds. But yeah, so that was really the approach. It was embracing a minimalistic approach. It was always asking ourselves, what is the least we need to do in order to keep our footprint small at each location? And yeah, that's how we approached the whole film, basically. We had some night exteriors as well. Those were artificially lit, of course, with movie lights. But again, we tried to really embrace a minimalistic approach to the best of our abilities and tried to keep the footprint as small as possible.
Yeah, wow. And so it was really evident that the picture quality was indistinguishable from, I guess, anything else. It's very out there that this was shot on a what would be considered a prosumer level camera.
That's right.
Which, and I mean, from the perspective of a viewer of the film, it's I mean, you can't. It's impossible. You really have to be pixel peeping, and even then, I don't think it's possible.
Even then, I don't think you can tell.
you really cannot tell. It's just stunning, and so I think with technology advancing in the way it has, do you think that's a part of the reason why your lighting approach, where you can approach this from this perspective of being quite run and gun and using what's available, because the sensor is so sensitive to light and clean and all of these things that otherwise require more augmentation of light?
I think that the new technology and the sensor definitely opened up additional opportunities for that. But, you know, a natural light approach is something that has existed since at least the French New Wave, if not earlier. And at the end of the day, it's all about a mindset and an aesthetic and what look and feel you're after for the film. So I like to hope that other cinematographers that have adopted this aesthetic approach in the past, like Nestor Almendros and Harris Savides and filmmakers like that have a very naturalistic look and feel to their work, Emmanuel Lubezki, would see the new technology that we have now, if some of them are no longer around, of course, and would have fully embraced it and just realized like, oh, this allows me to shoot with completely natural and available light in even more scenarios than I used to be able to, just by virtue of the limitations of the sensitivity of film stocks. But I think the aesthetic approach has always existed, has always been there. And that's something we were definitely after, and we were definitely trying to recapture that. But I do think that the technology, the way that it exists today, just creates more opportunities for that, which is only a good thing if that's the type of look that you're after.
Right. So can we dive into a little bit of an understanding of what was the logic or the thought process around choosing the tools that you used for acquisition on this film?
Yeah. So this sort of run and gun guerrilla documentary style that we've been talking about requires a small footprint in order to be nimble. And nimbleness was really the key for everything. It allowed us to access hard to get to locations. It allowed us to be very flexible on the day. And most importantly, I think it imbues the film and it gives Gareth the opportunity to shoot scenes and scenarios and locations that feel very authentic and lived in, and imbue the movie with a filmmaking style that feels reactive and it feels spontaneous and it feels electric and energetic and exciting. And in order to do that, he needs the physical freedom to be able to move the camera and move around in a space physically in order to do that. I think maybe an important detail that I may have not mentioned is that Gareth was operating the camera throughout the whole film, which he's done both on Monsters as well as on a lot of Rogue One. So he's really in control and in the lead in terms of where the camera is going and what it's filming and what it's looking at any given time. So our job really became about creating and uplifting and supporting the environment in which Gareth can create the film in the way that he wants and imbue it with that energy. And that led us to choosing lightweight lighting tools, LED, battery-powered LEDs, small lighting package, small footprint, and the FX3 in various gimbal rigs in order to, it all contributed to this idea of keeping a nimble and small footprint and keeping the flexibility and freedom at a maximum at any given time on set.
Great. And I noticed you also recorded into the Ninja 5.
That's correct.
What was the logic for that? Directly to that, yeah.
Well, it's quite simple. We tested the internal recording format in the FX3 and determined that it wasn't quite robust enough in terms of color and dynamic range for what we were looking for. Considering that the film was going to go through a lot of visual effects work and a whole post-production workflow with photocam. So as amazing as the FX3 was, I think it's also important to remember that it is a $4,000 camera and it comes with certain limitations that we had to work around. Thankfully, the camera does output 4K RAW, and the Atomos Ninja V recorder, V Plus, can record ProRes RAW and capture that raw format out of the Sony. And actually, it was that format that's what unlocked the camera for us. That's what really allowed us in the assessments to realize, oh, the imagery and the color depth and the information and the dynamic range that this camera is actually capable of capturing once you tap into the RAW and record onto the Ninja recorder actually is what puts it up into the level of, oh, this footage could intercut with or be completely interchangeable with Alexa and nobody would really notice. So yeah, it was really instrumental to get that recording quality that we were after, considering all the visual effects work and color we knew that we were going to have to do on the film.
I guess mentioning before, you worked on a lot of shorter form projects, music videos and whatnot. After, I guess, post doing your first studio film, what's your takeaway? What's the thing that you've learned the most from doing such a project?
I think the most important thing I learned, because there's so many, each film really has its own unique individual circumstances. Like a lot of the technical and logistical approaches that I maybe learned on this film were kind of unique to this film. There's some of them that you can carry on with you and some that are not relevant. And that's going to be the case with any project, and certainly is the case with any project I've worked with on the past. But I think my biggest takeaway on this film was the power of relationship and collaboration, to loop all the way back to what we talked about at the start, is that the process of collaborating with a director like Gareth, who's so visionary and so bold in his vision, but is also so open to bringing other people into that vision and making us a part of it and empowering his collaborators to contribute to this world, as well as my collaboration with Greg as co-DPs. That really inspired something in me that I think has always been there. I've always really loved the collaboration part of filmmaking and the collaborative nature of it. But I think this movie really kicked that into overdrive, and it made me realize not only how much I love it, but how important it is and how maybe essential it is more than anything to creating something of high quality and something artistic that everybody who worked on it is proud of and feels connected to and feels a part of. And I think that at the end of the day, that's all anybody can really hope for and ask for in a film or in any project, is to feel a connection to it. And I think that that connection really comes from the people that you're working with and the people you surround yourself with. So that was probably my biggest takeaway, and something that I would love to impart and sort of really go back to banging that drum of building that circle of collaborators is just essential to having a good experience working in the industry. I mean, there's a reason Martin Scorsese is out with a new film that's his 10th time working with Robert De Niro, and works with the same crew. Well, actually, a lot of these directors, all these directors work with the same producers, and they tend to work with the same crew that keep coming back. Is because once you kind of build that circle, that's the real fertile ground for high quality creative work. And this movie really opened my eyes to just how true that statement is.
Well said. Yeah. Okay. We've got one more question here that has come through from George's cameras.
Oh, fantastic.
That question is, what advice would you give to an emerging cinematographer that wants to advance their career?
Great question. And thank you for that question, to whoever submitted through George's camera. Really appreciate it. And it's an essential question, I think. And it's one that everybody is asking themselves and has asked themselves. And then I asked myself when I was starting out a few years ago. From my perspective, and this is purely my opinion, so take this with a grain of salt, because other people have other advice. But I think that in this day and age, it's never been easier to be a cinematographer. We have access to the most incredible tools that have ever existed, and they only get better. And all of these tools, LED lighting, digital cinematography, quote unquote prosumer cameras and equipment, they have done an incredible job at breaking down barriers and democratizing filmmaking. And all of that is incredibly potent and very, very empowering and wonderful. It's a double-edged sword, though, because what it means is that there's a lot more people out there who are jockeying for the same career and the same success and the same opportunities. And that can make the pursuit of wanting to become a cinematographer very challenging, because there's just a lot of other people that are doing it, because it's very easy to do it. So all of that said, I think that the most important thing to figure out for yourself as a cinematographer is what makes you unique, and what makes you as a cinematographer special, what makes you stand out from everybody else. And that's not to say what makes you better than everybody else. It's not that. It's what makes you and your point of view and your perspective and how you see the world and how you apply your aesthetics and how you apply all of your past experiences, your background, your loves, your traumas, the places you've been, the cultures you come from, and the things that you've seen. How do you put all of that into your work? And how does that come through in your work? How do you find your unique voice and your unique perspective and point of view and aesthetic and taste as a cinematographer? I think that's the most important thing, because that's what sets you apart. And that's what will get directors, producers, et cetera, to want to work with you, because they will be attracted to what you uniquely bring to a project and your unique taste and abilities and perspective. And so honing that and figuring that out, which takes time, by the way, it's not something that happens overnight, but putting in the time and the effort to learn that about yourself and to study film and to figure out, what do I like? What don't I like? What am I drawn to? What am I not drawn to? I think those are the important steps to take early on, because those are the seeds that you're planting for a long-term career, because that's what will make you stand out.
Yeah. Wow. Well said. Great advice.
Thank you.
Great advice.
I appreciate it.
I think that, paired with becoming a master of your tools and getting familiar with all the things that you've got to do on set. There's, education is very much free these days. So much stuff on, online that otherwise would be very difficult to acquire years ago. So
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Exactly. It's like I said, it's never been an easier time to become a cinematographer because of the availability of tools, education, even just access to films. You can stream anything these days.
Yeah.
So, uh, learning the technical side is very important, but that's in some ways the easy part, because all you need to do is just put in the effort and the work to educate, either self-taught or going to a school or however you choose to do it. But it's the finding and honing what makes you unique, as a filmmaker. That's the hard part, but that's arguably the most important part, because technique and technical, that stuff people pick up on. That's the stuff you learn along the way.
Well, thanks for your time, Oren. That was fantastic, very insightful, and congratulations to you once again for your amazing work. Very inspiring for all of the up and coming cinematographers and for everyone that's a creative. This is really awesome. So
Thanks.
we've got one more thing we'd like to do. We've got a lucky door prize, and we'd love if you could call out who that's for, Oren.
That's right. So the winner of the door prize, which is an Atomos Ninja 5, is Alex Milan. Congratulations. Well done.
Alex. Well done.
Hopefully you can pair it with your FX3 and record ProRes RAW the same way we did.
And we've also got 2 more prizes that we're giving out. We've got the Creamsource Micro Color, and also Sony are giving away a $300 voucher. So thanks to everyone for coming today. Oren, once again, thank you for your time. If I could just let everyone know, please, if you don't follow Oren on social media, please follow him on all of the channels. As well as, Oren, you do a really cool podcast, the Cinematography Salon, I think.
That's right. Yeah. I'm currently retired as co-host of the podcast, but we did do a really nice run of episodes earlier this summer, as part of our season 1. And for season 2 of the podcast, which I think launches this week, I am back on as a guest. So it's a fun full circle moment for all of us who worked on it. But yeah, we had some really great prior conversations with some really cool directors and filmmakers and cinematographers. So definitely check that out. And thanks again for having me. This was a real treat.
Awesome. Thanks again, Oren.
Okay. Cheers.